Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of Midland Council. It's Wednesday, November the 3rd, 2021. We had a closed session regarding an identifiable individual earlier, and we'll do that in a moment with a motion coming out of the closed session. So as you can tell, it's a virtual meeting and it's being broadcast on, let's see if I get this right this time, channel 53, and our YouTube page as well, of course, through Rogers TV Live. So as I said earlier, so I'll ask if there's, so I guess really what I should do here is do the land acknowledgement. The town of Midland recognizes that is located on land which is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation. This territory is within the Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16 and included within the Williams Treaties of 1923. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the historic homelands of the Métis, that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous persons. I think I'd ask Council to a moment of silent reflection to recognition of that we've passed 5 million souls who've perished globally in the pandemic. And while it looks a little better here, we still see people passing and afflicted with long-term effects. So you join me in a moment of silence reflection, please. Thank you very much. I'll ask if anybody has a declaration of conflict of interest around tonight's agenda. Seeing none, we have a motion arising from the closed session.
Worship. Sorry, for following the agenda, there's a section 6.1 where I was going to address.
I beg your pardon, you're absolutely correct. So there is, as Councillor Gordon has indicated, there is a portion in 6.1 where Councillor Gordon is going to address council that we had there were some staff complaints about comments made by Councillor Gordon, and he's going to speak to that at this point. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much. At our last council meeting, during a rather passionate debate, considering whether or not staff would be an appropriate resource to help our residents use the new parking system, I made a comment akin to the notion of throwing council a lifeline. However, my choice of words that followed were poorly chosen and resulted in some unintended offense. For that, I want to apologize unreservedly to anyone whom I unintentionally offended, and pledge that I'll endeavor to choose my words with more care and more sensitivity while arguing and passionately debating issues in council. I wasn't aware that the complainants, 2 of which I was made aware of, were staff. So that's even kind of more distressing, because I certainly didn't mean to target staff. They were actually part of what I was helping to help with. So at any rate, it was unintentional, and without re-arguing any of this stuff, I just wanted to unconditionally apologize and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. I'm sure that the folks who filed a grievance are happy with I hope they're happy with your apology. And I do apologize for skipping over that. I'm so used to just motoring on with the agenda. So we've got motions arising from the closed session. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Gordon, That further to the verbal report of the deputy clerk and confidential criteria-based matrix provided at the closed meeting session of council held November 3rd, 2021, regarding committee appointments, council confirms its direction to administration to continue to recruit for the vacancy on council's task force on affordable housing. Council, you've heard the motion. Comments or questions before I call a question? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that carries. Next, we have a motion regarding the regular council agenda. It's moved by Councillor Main. I don't see Councillor Downer, so I'll change this to Councillor Shesky. You okay with that, Councillor? Shesky, you okay with that? Thank you. No, that the contents of the regular council with closed session agenda for November 3rd, 2021 be approved as amended. Addition of item 14.1, public meeting, zoning bylaw amendment ZBA-04-21, Midland Bay Landing, otherwise known as 420 Bayshore Drive, and item 15.1, CSR 2021-71, Midland Bay Landing, proposed zoning bylaw amendment. So council, you've heard that motion. Comments or questions with respect to the agenda? Thank you. Then all those in favor? That too carries. Thank you very much. We move to the consent agenda and moved by Councillor McGinn. Oh, she's not there. Councillor Prost. Seconded by Councillor Gordon, that the items and related recommendations contained within the November 3rd, 2021 consent agenda as consent items, I beg your pardon, having been considered by council, be adopted. Any comments or questions around the consent agenda? Not seeing any, then all those in favor? Thank you. We then move by Councillor Shevsky, second by Councillor Cunningham. The council resolves into the committee of the whole. Again, comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That too carries. And Deputy Mayor, we're now in committee of the whole.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, everybody. Committee of the whole, we have no presentations this evening. We have no deputations or petitions, but we do have one public meeting. A zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA-04-21, Midland Bay Landing, 420 Bayshore Drive. So I would like to call this public meeting in order. This public meeting is being held under the Planning Act, considering an application for a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw 2004-90, respecting 420 Bayshore Drive, the property otherwise known as Midland Bay Landing. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission before the bylaw is passed or an approval given, you will not be entitled to appeal the decisions to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and you may not be added as a party to a hearing on the appeal to the OLT, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Town of Midland on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the Town of Midland through the clerk at the clerk's email is clerk@midland.ca, and that must be done before the bylaw is passed or an approval given. The purpose of this public meeting is to hear from residents and to seek clarity on the application. Council is not making a decision on the application or taking a position. Staff will report back in the future with a recommendation report. This is your opportunity to speak, and this is your opportunity for the public to speak, and council encourage you to do so. I will now ask the town executive director of planning to introduce tonight's staff presentation, which will be followed by a presentation by town's planning consultant, Wes Crown, to introduce the applicant, confirming notification, and the note and any note of any correspondent received. I'll turn it over.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, members of the public. This evening's public meeting is for a zoning bylaw amendment being brought forward by the town for 420 Bay Shore Drive for the Midland Bay Landing site. The town has contracted MHBC Planning to assist in the processing of this file, and I wanted to introduce our planning consultant on this matter. We'll be providing a presentation this evening, and that's Mr. Wes Crown. Mr. Crown, would you like to present yourself on the screen and proceed? Thanks. Thanks, Wes. Good to see you.
Good to see everyone. Thanks, Adam, for the introduction. For most, I believe I probably don't need an introduction. Just to confirm for council, you do have a detailed staff report, CSR 2021-71 before you this evening, and a detailed planning justification report dated October 2021, which provides a fulsome background with respect to this application. I do have what I hope will be a brief but informative presentation to run through to provide a little bit of background and context and to describe the nature of the rezoning application that's before you this evening, and for which the municipality is looking for public comment and input. So we can go to the next slide. I just would like to confirm that the notice was provided in full compliance with the requirements of the municipality's official plan, which goes actually beyond the minimum requirements of the Planning Act. So notice was provided in the Midland Mirror on October 14th. Notice was also mailed to all landowners within 120 meters of the subject property on the 13th of October. 2 property signs were erected on the property at both the east and at the west end. And the application webpage was also posted on October 13th, and the link is provided in the notice. I can confirm, Mr. Chairman, that the notice requirements of the Planning Act have been satisfied. We can go to the next slide. Thank you, Catherine. This is the Midland Bay Landing site, and this is the subject property of tonight's rezoning application. And the Midland Bay Landing site is denoted on this slide in the heavy red boundary. The property is located north of Bayshore Drive, south of Midland Bay, east of Central Marine, and west of the extension of William Street to the shoreline. If we go to the next slide. This slide is an aerial image from 2018 of the subject property. Again, the boundary of the site is highlighted in red. The Midland Bay Landing site is denoted as well. The property is 16.24 hectares. It has slightly over 1,100 meters of frontage on Midland Bay, Georgian Bay, and is surrounded by parkland and residential to the south, the lake to the north, of course, residential to the east, and commercial to the west. The site is just to the east of downtown Midland, where it terminates at Midland Bay. We can go to the next slide. So, Mr. Chairman, for those of you that have reviewed the staff report and the planning justification report, you'll note that there is a significant planning context and history with respect to this site. And there's a detailed chronology of the history of the planning and development for the Midland Bay Landing property contained within the planning justification report. What I'll provide, though, is in council, you probably haven't heard this for a while, a Reader's Digest condensed version of the background. It really began in 2012 when Unum Canada announced that it was closing on the waterfront in Midland. And as those of you from the community will know, Unum was the subsequent company after Indusman, and it was a large aggregate processing facility on the waterfront. With the closing of Unum Canada in 2012, Council saw an opportunity to reimagine the future for this former industrial site as a major new mixed-use waterfront community integrated into the town and integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. In short succession, the municipality undertook a series of actions to try to realize on that vision for this property. So an interim control bylaw was passed, a master plan study was conducted with significant public involvement and engagement in that exercise. Once completed, a planning justification and municipal comprehensive review was completed to provide the guidance how to update the official plan with respect to the site. And in 2016, the municipality adopted OPA number 10, which established the major land use framework for this new redeveloped neighborhood, or what will become the new redeveloped neighborhood for this area of the town on this 16 hectare site. This slide is part of, or is the demonstration plan that was produced as part of the master plan, which shows one potential expression of the vision that is contained within the municipality's official plan. It is not the ultimate vision for the waterfront, but it really sets out, I think, the fundamental framework elements for this new neighborhood within the town of Midland. The large public realm, the large public spaces, the continuous public ownership and waterfront promenade, a civic square, and significant other components of this mixed-use waterfront neighborhood. Next slide, please, Catherine. So as I indicated, the town updated its official plan in 2016, which was approved by the county shortly thereafter. And this is Schedule C1 to the town's new official plan, which carried forward the Midland Bay Landing official plan amendment number 10 into the new official plan without significant change. It outlines sort of the three broad land use categories, the waterfront districts 1 and 2, and the waterfront parks and open space, which is identified in the green. And then through a series of other symbols on the plan, set out the public realm and the land use framework for this site. You'll also note that there are two sets of hatch lines on this site, which sets out the detailed noise policy framework for this site that the municipality worked through with the ADM to ensure that the development within the Midland Bay Landing site would not be impacted by the activities at ADM, but also, and probably as critical for ADM, is that any of the development that is proposed and constructed on the Midland Bay Landing site would not have an impact on the ADM operations. We can go to the next slide. So the town has a problem, and the problem is that the municipality's zoning bylaw don't reflect the new official plan or even OPA number 10. It reflects the historic and incorrect uses for this property. So you can see there are two zones on the site. The industrial 1-1 zone, which is where the former human industrial operation was. And then the RMCH zone reflects where the old coal dock activity was on the property. And the municipality had a number of options to address this nonconformity and this conflict between its official plan and its zoning bylaw. And it's been chosen for the town to deal with that through rezoning the site to an interim or a transitional zone to ensure that a number of very specific objectives are achieved. Number one is to get rid of that non-conforming, conflicting industrial and marine commercial zone on the property, and to bring the zoning more into compliance and conformity with the official plan, but also to send a message to the development community that the industrial zoning on the property was no longer appropriate for the site. It will also ensure by rezoning the property with that deferred development D zone that any future land use changes on this property will be obligated to conduct a full public consultation and engagement process to ensure that the public is directly involved when the detailed plans and designs for the property are prepared. And lastly, the use of the deferred development zone is something that can be done fairly quickly, and to tie our schedule on the planning side into the work that the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation is undertaking with respect to looking for a private sector partner or partners with respect to the actual development of the Midland Bay Landing site. So if we can go to the next slide. So the rezoning that's before council this evening is to rezone the two portions of the property from their current zones to a deferred development D zone. And you can see that's highlighted on this slide. Next slide, please. So as I indicated, the intent is to rezone the property from their current industrial and marine commercial zones to a deferred development D zone, that a new deferred development zone would be established in the municipality's bylaw, and that any development on that site, and this is specified in the draft bylaw, is that the actual rezoning of the site to the final zones would not occur until council is satisfied with the new proposed development for the property and the final zones for the property as well. The permitted uses within the D zone will be those limited to lawfully existing on the date the bylaw comes into force and effect, and as well public uses of the town of Midland. And the development standards, again, are those listed or restricted to those existing on the date of the passage of the bylaw. Next slide, Catherine. So as part of the consultation process, the application and the proposed rezoning was circulated first to the technical reviewing departments and agencies, and at this point, no issues have been identified with the proposed rezoning or the proposed approach. There have been numerous resident inquiries with respect to the proposal and its effect, and questions about the form and details of the public notice that have been provided. And I understand from Mr. Farr that staff have provided answers to each of those residents who have inquired with respect to the proposed rezoning. Go to the next slide. The intent, again, is this meeting is to hear from the public. Following tonight's public meeting and the receipt of all the comments that will be heard this evening and received by the municipality, those will be directed to staff to consider as part of the further review and analysis of the proposed rezoning. The intent is to prepare a comprehensive report to council with staff recommendations, and to include in that staff report responses to any and all comments that have been submitted to the municipality, and then to look to council to make a decision at a future meeting to either approve, refuse, or refer back to staff this municipally initiated amendment. And of course, once a decision is made, notice of that decision will be provided as required under the Planning Act. So, Mr. Chairman, as always, I always say it's a Reader's Digest condensed version presentation, and I always take longer than I probably should, but certainly willing to answer any questions that council and members of the public have with respect to the proposed rezone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crown. My kids would ask what Reader Digest is, but I'm sure most of us watching today do know. I will now, anyone wishing to make comment or have a comment to add, you'll notice that you'll have to call the deputy clerk at 705-526-4275, extension 2212. That number is also being displayed on Rogers TV for anyone wishing to call in. So, Madam Clerk, do we have any, or Deputy Clerk, do we have any calls at this point?
We have no calls, but we have Elizabeth Marion that I'm going to promote to panelist.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. Once again, if anyone's wishing to call in, the number is 705-526-4275, extension 2212, with comments or questions with regards to this public meeting on Midland Bay Landing rezoning. Miss Marion? I believe you're muted. Do we have Miss Marion, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, I've promoted her to panelist. I just need her to accept it.
Okay, we'll wait 1 minute. Any calls at this point?
No, there's no calls.
Thank you very much. We'll give Miss Marion a second to log in.
Okay, she's logged in.
Hi, Miss Marion. You're on mute. Hello, Miss Marion.
Hello.
Hi, how are you this evening? Thank you so much for joining.
Oh,
us.
I'm kind of confused with all this. I was just want to listen to everybody.
Oh, okay. Did you have a question or a comment with regards to the public meeting?
No, not yet. I'm waiting for results on my zoning change on my property.
Okay, this is a public meeting with regards to Midland Bay Landing.
Okay.
So if you have any inquiries with regards to your own, I would suggest you reach out to, would it be fine to give Mr. Farr, if you reach out to Mr. Farr at the town office, his number is 705-526-4275 and is available during business hours. Is that fine?
Fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk, any call-ins?
Yes, we have Yvonne Teets on the
Wonderful.
phone. I'm going to put her on speaker.
Thank you so much.
This is a public meeting for the
Hi, Miss
planning change for
Hi.
Bay Mooring somewhere.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Could you mute yourself? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Could you mute? Oh, thank you. Miss Teets?
Yes.
Hi, how are you? If you could state your name and address, and if you have a question for Mr. Crown or a council? Miss Teets?
And what might be the rush for this? Since that the website states that there will be further future rezoning, so why would we not wait until that future rezoning and then maybe use it as and have the buyer, and when the buyer is looking at it, see that as part of the deal.
I apologize. We're having a very, very hard time hearing you. Are you on a speakerphone or something? You may have to get off and talk directly into the phone. Ms. Teets? Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk, is there any way we could get her on a different type of line? It's very hard. I unfortunately couldn't understand her question.
Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. From what I heard, her question was, why are we zoning now and why wouldn't we zone later? I think that was
Good for you, Councillor Main. Thank you very much. Mr. Crown, we're moving this zoning forward today. Is there a reason why, or is there a reason to wait, or could you share, please?
So I think thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Main. I think I had got a part of it as well, but I think you filled out the balance. I think principally that the benefit of doing the rezoning to the D zone is to get rid of the outdated and outmoded industrial zoning for the property. There is a concern, I think, amongst the development community that the industrial zone may deter people from being interested in the site. And by using the deferred development D zone, which is a fairly common practice on Ontario, it's sending a message to the development community that the municipality expects that there will be future rezonings, and that this is really just an interim and transitional stage, and that there will be an opportunity to rezone the property down the road. So again, it's an interim or a transitional zone. It sends a clear message to the development community that the municipality is anticipating and expecting future rezonings, and the community and the public will have an opportunity to engage and participate in that process down the road. And from my perspective, getting rid of that industrial zoning sends a clear message to the community that that is not a use that the municipality is anticipating on this property anymore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crown. Madam Deputy Clerk, is there any other calls at this point?
Mrs. Teets was cut off, but she's back on the line. If you would
Wonderful.
like me to put her back on speaker.
Please, if we could. Ms. Teets?
Yes, hello?
Hi, we have a hard time hearing you, but if you could do your best to speak up, but I presume, if you heard Mr. Crown's response, your question was why rezone it now? Is there an opportunity to wait? Is there did you hear his response, and did you have a follow-up with regards to that comment?
Follow-up. The Midland website states that there will be further future rezoning. So why would we not wait as part of that when a buyer is looking at it, and do that as part of the deal so that we're not looking at large costs? I'm looking at what the cost may be involved in this as well.
Mr. Crown, care to comment?
Sure. Again, I'll be hopefully a little bit briefer. I think it's really about getting rid of the non-conforming and conflicting industrial zone on the property. And by using a deferred development zone, it sends a clear message to the development community that the municipality is looking for redevelopment plans and future rezoning applications with respect to this property. It's really about getting rid of that non-conforming and conflicting industrial zone.
Thank you, Mr. Crown.
Sorry, is there a cost involved in that?
Sorry?
Is there a cost involved? What is the cost?
The cost will, is there a cost involved, Mr. Crown? I presume that will come with the report on the 19th, but if you could share today, that'd be great.
So I think the short answer is I don't know the answer to that question. Part of that will be a part of the negotiations with future private sector partner or partners as to who is responsible for what portions of the costs with respect to the future redevelopment of the property. So I'm not even sure, and maybe the CAO or Mr. Farr would know the answer to that question.
Mr. Farr, care to answer?
Well, I think that at this time, as the town establishes a partnership, these are municipal lands. So depending upon the nature of the relationship, the town may take the lead and advance the zoning bylaw to facilitate the redevelopment, or alternately, depending upon the nature of the partnership, the applicant might do so. In either case, the town has as the landowner of the property has a clear interest in advancing any proposal in a manner that's consistent with the plan that's been set out in the official plan and is consistent with the work, the significant amount of work that's been done to set the framework for development that might occur on the property in the future.
Thank you, sir. Madam Deputy Clerk, any other calls or questions with regards to this item?
No,
No other calls?
no, there's no other calls.
Thank you very much. Since there's no other calls, I'll thank Mr. Crown and Mr. Farr. Councillor Main, we're going to have a motion come forward, so I'm going to read the motion and we'll have answer any questions if that's fine. We'll close this public meeting. So I'd like to thank the public and for attending, and we'll call this public meeting to an end. Thank you very much. Now, we do have a motion coming out of this public meeting, and we'll ask for some clarity if anyone at the council has any questions. And it's that staff report CSR 2021-71 Midland Bay Landing proposed zoning bylaw amendment dated November 3rd, 2021 be received, and 1, that all public and agency comments received through the statutory public notice and public meeting respecting proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the Midland Bay Landing site be received and directed to staff and consultant for review and recommendation report back to council. I need a mover and a seconder with regards to this motion. Moved by Mayor Strathern, second by Councillor Main. Councillor Main, you had a question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the presentation on this. This is interesting. This is the first example that we've seen of the deferred development of placeholder zoning. Would it be fair to say that this is kind of a palate cleanser zoning, where it's kind of cleared the old zoning, but it's a placeholder for the next opportunity? I just had 2 quick questions. How does the deferred development zoning affect interim site usages? I'm guessing informal usage of the site will continue. And then the second question is, how does this relate to the upcoming zoning bylaw, and how does this relate to the new official plan? Are we most likely looking forward to an official plan amendment or multiple official plan amendments for this development? Thank you.
Mr. Crown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Main. It's nice to see that you're still asking tough and insightful questions. I like the notion of this being a placeholder or a palate cleanser, because that's to a great extent what this is getting rid of that non-conforming industrial zoning from the site and really leaving behind the industrial legacy of the properties, particularly I think from a planning perspective. Generally, the deferred development zone will not impact any of the existing uses on the property. So the parkland, the informal trail uses, those will be able to continue to occur on the property. Any other uses that are existing as of the date of the passage of this bylaw will also not only be allowed to be continued, they will also be legal. And the bylaw has been structured such that any use, including interim uses, that are undertaken by the town of Midland as the owner of the property, those will be permitted to occur on the property as well. And so it helps that the town is the owner of the property, but I think the deferred development zone will allow the town to continue to do its interim planning with respect to the property, but it'll also help the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation with respect to its work to go out and find a private sector partner or partners for the property.
Councillor Main, follow up? I know you well enough.
No, thank you. I just wanted to touch base on the zoning bylaw or the official plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
So unless, and I would be surprised, to be honest, that you would be seeing any official plan amendments with respect to this property. You have a fairly robust and detailed policy framework, land use built form, public realm framework for this property, which includes a significant amount of flexibility to allow the private sector to realize a range of visions for the property within those frameworks. There may be individual rezoning applications depending on the deal that the municipality strikes with its private sector partners. And depending on the success of the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation in finding partners, you may or may not be able to incorporate the rezoning work with respect to the Midland Bay Landing site into a future comprehensive zoning bylaw for the municipality. Again, it would not surprise me that depending on the timing that the deferred development zone, which is a standard approach across Ontario, is carried forward into the new zoning bylaw for the municipality, depending on the timing of the work with the new private sector partners.
Thank you, Mr. Crown. Mayor Strathern?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a point of clarification. You say any existing and current use, you mean any existing and current legal use as provided through zoning or other statutes?
Correct. Uses that were lawfully established prior to the passage of the municipalities bylaw. That's correct. Thank you for the clarification, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon?
Thanks. So I guess you mean not camping. I had a couple questions. You know, it comes up to me, had a great visit with Mr. Kernahan during the promenade unveiling. And questions persist from the public when they look at the, the depiction at the boardwalk or at the promenade, and also what they see on the online here is that parking lot where people love to go and hang out and watch the, boats go by and fish and whatnot, doesn't appear to be a parking lot or access for the public on the visuals. So, and of course, they're looking for some certainty that there will still be parking down there and they can still fish and enjoy what they're doing along the promenade. So I don't know if that forms part of the zoning or if there's been any changes that we could offer some reassurance that that's still going to be accessible in some way. We're not leaving it up to a developer to decide, oh no, you can't park there and fish anymore. My second question is I was very happy to see the expanded depth of the promenade section. It's certainly a lot deeper than was originally, set aside. And the rationale for that was explained, and it was quite, warmly received by all in attendance and those who visited subsequently. I'm just wondering if any of this zoning takes into account the fact that it seems that Midland Bay Landing Development Corp has understood or felt or, come to the realization that that deeper segment of public lands for the promenade and the driveway is something that they intend on keeping and isn't just part of this showpiece and it's going to narrow it down again. I don't know if that forms part of this zoning, but those are the two sort of takeaways from the unveiling and the relatively warm reception, I think, that most people have provided to me of what they've seen down there so far.
I'm not sure if this falls under the zoning, but Mr. Crown, if you care to comment.
So I guess the short answer is probably doesn't form part of the zoning. I will tell you that 4.3 hectares of that property is designated in a park and open space in the official plan. And in the official plan, the area of the Midland Bay Landing Waterfront Park, that area is shown as public park and open space in the official plan. So the intention is, I think, with the redevelopment of the property, that there will be a public open space in that location, but the details with respect to that still have to come. Will it be accessible by cars and parking? I'm not sure what public park facilities will be provided there. Rest assured that the entire shoreline will be publicly accessible in the form that the demonstration project has recently constructed. So whether you'll still have direct access off William Street, that's still to come down the road. I think that dealt with the questions. And again, the detailed development plans, the rezonings, all of those matters will have to come through the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation to council for approval.
Follow up, Councilor Gordon?
I guess it's just that, if the original plan was, and I don't know the exact depth, but let's say it was going to be 50 feet from the water line, that was the envision for, please correct me on what the number is, but if it's 50 feet from the water line back, and that's the promenade section, they've decided to build out in 75 feet deep now with the promenade section. And which I think is great, because the way it was phrased to me is they felt it was too confining. They didn't want it to be like Aberdeen. They wanted it to be a lot more open. And I was just wondering if the fact that they've done this, which is wonderful, if there's something enshrined in the way we are laying out the property as we advertise it for sale that now expands the amount of, waterfront square footage or whatever that belongs to the community for community use. Has it expanded, or is it still that smaller section that we've now overbuilt on? I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Yeah, again, this may be, I don't know if it's helpful or not. I think the demonstration project was a brilliant step for the municipality and the Midland Bay Landing Development Corporation, because I think it puts ideas to concrete, if you will, and people can actually see what the municipality is expecting along the waterfront promenade. My recollection is that the waterfront promenade was always supposed to be approximately 30 meters in width, plus or minus, and it may vary depending on the detailed design. And I think the waterfront promenade gives a clear picture of what that public realm will look like when the property is developed. And again, this is well beyond the deferred development D zone.
Thank you, Mr. Crown. Mayor Strathern, question? You're on mute, sir. You're gonna get a t-shirt. There you
The
are.
space bar isn't working for me. In the master plan, there is a cross section of showing from the edge of the water through to the edge of what you be developed as commercial or housing or whatever. And it is about 30 meters, and it shows pedestrian pathway, bicycling and skateboarding and so on section, different surfaces, and then also a road which may or may not be there. So the what you see down there at the moment is actually not quite as wide as the 30 meters that Mr. Crown alludes to in the master plan. And I would say, if you look at the official plan in the presentation, the master plan and the area, sorry, not the aerial, the master plan and the official plan, they both show in Mr. Crown's presentation that that property is in fact green space. And in the Parks and Trails master plan, there is a treatment for that space in terms of shade and so on. So there is provision for that space to be continued as public realm rather in a number of plans.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to ask that we keep our questions only to the rezoning from to D. If any other questions or comments with regards to this rezoning? I see none. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I want to thank Mr. Farr and Mr. Crown. Always a pleasure, and thank you so much. We have a motion in front of us, moved by Mayor Strathern, second by Councilor Marion. All those in favor? Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 5. Oh, wonderful. So carried. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Crown. All right, next up, we have a COVID update from Mr. Deneau. Mr. Deneau.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and to members of Council. As with a number of COVID updates, I want to take the opportunity, because I know Council certainly wants to acknowledge key members of staff who support them. But this will be the last Council meeting for Laura. Laura will be departing towards the end of November, but this is the last meeting I think she'll be able to attend. But I did want to acknowledge, obviously, the tremendous work that Laura has done over the 4 years that she's been with the town of Midland. And as I told Laura, she was my first contact with the town of Midland, and certainly gave me such a positive experience that I wanted to become part of this team. And I think Laura has that effect on many people. But not only that, certainly characteristic of her, she's an extremely hard worker, day and night, weekdays and weekends. I can certainly attest to that. And she's taken on some very sizable projects in her 4 years. A lot of transitions for services. She supported 4 unions. And I think if you asked all those unions, there's a tremendous amount of respect in that relationship, and she works hard at that. So I want to thank her for that. Most recently, she did the ADP transition, which is an absolutely critical part, not only to provide payroll, but to, again, deliver data for us to ensure that we're giving good information to council so we can make better decisions. So she's been a tremendous person to work with, both professionally and personally. And on behalf of all of the town and council, I'd like to thank Laura for all her contributions and wish her and her family nothing but success as she heads over to the District of Muskoka.
Here,
So,
here. Congratulations. Good luck.
with your permission, Deputy Ross, if Laura would like to make any remarks.
Ms. Yorkin. And congratulations and good luck in District of Muskoka.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor and your worship and members of council. It has absolutely been an honor to serve the town of Midland for the last 4 years. As David has said, it has been an adventure. Through your council term, and I thank you all for the support to be able to accomplish so many of those major advancements for Midland, bringing it forward. It has been tremendous to introduce, like David said, new policies and procedures, but also the ADP system that allows employees, first and foremost, they actually have the tools to be able to understand their payroll, their time and attendance, and have access to readily available information. I am very grateful to the leadership that I've had, David, Andy, Adam, and formerly Tina, who is she's moved on herself. But I can't forget my team. No leader is without the support of those that they surround themselves. And I am so very thankful that I've had Charmin LeBlanc with me for that 4-year term. In addition, Gail Ree, who has been with us with me for 2 years, Claire Pike, and also Shannon Thompson Kerr. So with that, I greatly appreciate and thank you all for the 4 years of adventures, and I look forward to my next adventures with Muskoka.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yorkin.
Thank you very much for allowing me to do that, Council and Deputy Ross. In terms of the COVID status in Simcoe Muskoka, I'll just give a couple stats, obviously, to make sure we're all aware of kind of the current situation. So 17 cases currently in hospital across Simcoe Muskoka. That's 8 new cases in hospital. So to the mayor's point, this pandemic continues to wreak havoc in certain cases, but again, I think there's a lot of positive news as well. The number of people vaccinated with 1 dose across Simcoe Muskoka is about 87% of the 12+ population, and the number of people with 2 doses in the 12+ population is about 83%. For Midland, the first dose population is 88%. And the second dose population is almost 86%, so higher than the Simcoe Muskoka average. So, great results from that perspective. Midland also, the month of October, we had 0 cases. 0 cases. This is the first month this year that we've had 0 cases in Midland. So that was certainly a good month for us, and I think we're all hopeful that continues. And again, that's I think. Again, really points to, I think, the resilience certainly of Midlanders, but also the respect that they have for the protocols and procedures that have to be taken. So hats off to the entire population for doing that. In terms of there was one additional death that did occur in Simcoe Muskoka. So the total number of deaths in Simcoe Muskoka over the pandemic is 267. So that's kind of the vaccination epidemiological results. A few other things I'll comment on. On October 25th, we did see the capacity restrictions begin to loosen in certain settings where there are vaccination proof requirements, and that impacted our rec centers. So we saw those capacity limits being lifted in some regard. But again, from everything our staff has been telling us, people again are being tremendously cooperative. The associations are being quite helpful. I think everyone's enjoying the fact that, provided they present their proof of vaccination, then they've got a more normal experience within that rec center. So it's allowing us to accommodate things a little easier, like tournaments and change over the facilities quicker because of that. So I think again, a little bit of normalcy, returning to some of those experiences, which is I think positive for everyone. That continues in the business world as well, and we saw that with restaurants and some other areas. So that was certainly an adjustment that we saw. Some other things you'll see, I think we just saw the first light ceremony that Ste. Marie among the Hurons typically does around the holidays. We saw that recently advertised. So again, you're starting to see some of these events that are allowed to happen start to come back. So I think, again, a credit to everyone respecting all the appropriate guidance that we've been given. The other thing that came into effect on Monday, the staff policy around vaccination became effective. So that went, again, quite smoothly. And I want to thank Laura and Charmin from our HR team who really helped to put that procedure in place. The other organization I do like to thank is the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce, because they are, the province's agency to provide us with rapid antigen testing, which is part of our procedure. And they've been extremely helpful to help make sure we have access to that. But by all accounts, everything is working tremendously well. Anyone using any of our facilities can certainly take solace in the fact that all of our staff are in compliance with our vaccination procedure. So that's worked out well. November 15th is when that very similar procedure for council will become effective, and also for our agency boards and commissions. So we don't expect any issues with that. We think it's a thoughtful process, but again, it just helps us maintain a safe environment. So those two things took place. The other piece of guidance that I'll share with you, on October 29th, we did receive the guidance that we expected from Dr. Gardner on council chamber practices and what he is recommending that we do. And he does recommend that we continue to have a cautious approach. He does continue to recommend remote attendance as the safest means to do it. But should council wish to go back into council chambers, he did provide guidance on how you should look at that facility, both in terms of if you're accommodating public in that space or without public. So we're actively looking at our facility. We think we can deliver certainly a safe environment for council to consider returning to. We've got a vendor looking at some of the modifications that are required to really make it an experience that would actually work much better. I think we all know there are some limitations with our current council setup. So we're looking at adjusting some of the audio and video to make that better. And we're hoping to test that in December and get that ready for a January start with council. So that's the current plan. Hopefully the equipment can get through the supply chain. We're pretty confident that we're going to be able to get that stuff. And the suppliers assured us that we're very high on the priority list amongst all these council chambers that are trying to get retrofitted. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Deputy Mayor, unless there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. I see Councillor Gordon.
That's a COVID update without question for me. A couple of them is your name and things that are going back to normal. Just a quick shout out for Askinonia. They resume all of their services for seniors on November 15th. So that's pretty exciting. That's a good sign because that's a really vulnerable population, but also heavily vaccinated. My real question though is about the big guy in the red suit. Santa Claus parade. Are we looking at having a traditional Santa Claus parade, or are we going to have to do reverse Santa Claus parade again this year?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councillor Gordon. I think what we're planning, we did have some discussion with that earlier this week. I think we're probably going to have to go with something similar to last year. The planning that's required to get this organized and some of the coordination that's involved to do something a little more traditional, I don't think is going to be able to be accomplished. So we're finalizing that right now. We'll be putting some communication out with the organizations that traditionally help support that event to make sure that people understand exactly what will happen over those holidays. But we want to try and celebrate as best as we can. I'm not sure a traditional parade down the street will be possible, but we'll confirm that relatively soon.
Any other questions or comments? Follow up,
Just-
Councilor Gordon?
If I could, yeah. So, if we go with the reverse parade again, I mean, by all accounts, that was a pretty big hit last year. I think the only feedback I got is there were people who were stuck in line so long, they never got to get in. So I don't know if maybe you could just keep that in mind with maybe we need to extend the hours, or I don't know, like you guys have the creative minds, you'll figure it out, but there was a lot of people that just couldn't make it even though they tried. And if we're going to do that again, I think it was a really neat idea, and the town pulled it off, like volunteers and everybody involved, they did a great job on it, but we just couldn't reach enough people. So maybe just if we're going to do it a second year, look at ways to make it, run longer or move faster. I don't know, whatever the deal is. Have people coming in two directions, I don't know, but that's the only feedback that I've heard consistently from last year. If we're going to do it again, let's make it so more people can enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gordon. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Main?
Yeah, it sounds like some exciting King Street news and parades and all that information will be coming soon. So stay tuned for that. I do have a COVID related question. It's announced that the youth 5 to 11 vaccine may be rolling out in the next month or so before the end of the year. The health unit said that there may be 6 clinics opening up in Simcoe County. Have we heard anything if Midland might be reopening our vaccination clinic?
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councilor Main. Thank you for the question. We've always made it clear to the health unit that, Midland, we want to help, obviously, not only our community, but North Simcoe. We've got fantastic staff and fantastic facilities that can help accommodate those types of necessary services. So they have reached out to us, and we are working with them on looking at accommodating a clinic for those means. The other thing I should mention in the same vein, they've also would like us to obviously encourage people to take advantage of the flu shot. It's that time of year again. So to the extent that you can consider that, please consider getting your flu shot as well. But we are looking at trying to accommodate a vaccine clinic for those children, as mentioned.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Dino. Follow up, Councilor Main?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. I know that a lot of people are making note of the 5 million death toll, which is a completely demoralizing and so devastating number that we've had. But one inspiring number is that we're nearly about to hit 50% of the global population vaccinated. We have about 3.9 billion people vaccinated. I was just reading the Indian Covaxin vaccine, which is already over 110 million vaccines, has been approved by the World Health Organization for emergency use globally. And if you read up about Cuba, amazing story out of Cuba. They've developed 3 vaccines, and they've already started vaccinating their children with the children-developed vaccination, the Abdullah and the Soberana 2. It's just incredible. I've been reading up a lot on vaccinations and vaccine technology. It's quite an interesting read. For somebody that doesn't have a science or chemical background, it's a little over my head, but it's very inspiring. So it goes back to the point of to encourage everyone to get vaccinated because it's really important. As we're seeing RVH outbreak, people are still dying from outbreaks still as the pandemic rages on. So again, thank you for everyone for all your hard work getting vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Main. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Dino? I see none. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, and appreciate the update. Next up, we have notice of motions. Any councillor have a notice of motion to bring forward this evening? Councillor Gordon?
Thank you. It reads simply that administration reviews policy options regarding regulating residential and commercial light pollution for the town of Midland, and that a staff report be brought to council for consideration at a future meeting. And I thank Councillor Main for inspiration on the wording.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gordon. Any other notice of motion coming forward, Councillor Main?
Sorry, just can you reiterate, did Councillor Gordon say lifeboats?
Light.
Okay,
No.
sorry.
Yeah.
You'd like to say it again? I think a few people might have missed it.
No problem. It's regards light pollution, people's
Oh,
lights
yes.
shining in your windows and, being obnoxious the way they're positioned, unintentionally, of course. And just in short, it's that administration reviews policy options regarding regulating residential and commercial light pollution for the town of Midland, and that a staff report be brought to council for consideration at a future meeting.
Thank you.
And I emailed the clerk.
Councilor Gordon. Any other notice of motion come forward? I see none. General announcements, any announcements from this council this evening? Councilor Ocheski, and then I'll have Councilor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No secret, I'm participating in Movember again this year. I started a little early this year because I like to get started talking about it on November 1st. For those who don't know, Movember was created to bring awareness to men's mental health, suicide prevention, as well as prostate and testicular cancer. So this has got to be my 5th, 6th, maybe 10th year participating, and my mustache gets a little uglier every year. So the next council meeting will be an interesting one. They're doing a few campaigns this year. They're doing Host a Moment, which is any opportunity to get out and have a group of people, hopefully mustached individuals, and do something to bring awareness to the cause. They're doing Mow Your Own Way, which is challenge other people to do things to bring awareness to the cause. I'm not personally collecting money, but I know Tiny Township Fire Department are, and I'm sure there's many other groups that are raising money. So I support anybody raising money for this cause and wearing one of these on their face for the month, and support men's health in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chesky, and you look fantastic. Councilor Gordon?
And it includes the ladies too. I know a couple of ladies that can grow a mean mustache. This could be the one time a year to get away with it. No, on a more serious note, I got informed that St. Margaret's Church was the victim of vandalism this past week. As parishioners arrived at the church this past Sunday morning, October 31st, they were greeted by large X's spray painted with red paint across the 3 wooden double doors, the main entrance, that face on a Hugel, and another large X spray painted in white across a side entrance glass door. So, I mean, it's really just repugnant that there are still people in our community that would defile a place of worship. And I hope that the culprits are brought to justice in the coming days. And if you have any information about this, please contact the OPP at 1-888-310-1122, 1-888-310-1122 with any information you can share about this act of vandalism.
Thank you for sharing, Councilor Gordon. Yeah, this is not acceptable in my eyes. Thank you. Mayor Strathern?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to remind people that this is the 100th anniversary of the poppy. It was introduced to the predecessor of today's Royal Canadian Legion by a lady from France who took her inspiration from the Colonel McRae's poem, Flanders Fields. The Legion will be having a socially distanced ceremony at the Cenotaph on the 11th of November at starting about a quarter to 11 or thereabouts. Encourage everybody to support the Poppy campaign. It's all the proceeds go to veterans and their families to support them. None of the proceeds are for administration or anything else. All these funds go directly to veterans in support of them and their families. So please support the Legion, wear a poppy, and see you at the Cenotaph.
Thank you, Worship. Any other announcements? I have one, if that's all right. Councilor Main, please go ahead, and I'll do mine at the end.
Thank you. Yeah, just want to give note again, we touched on it very briefly at the COVID-19, but the business improvement area is working very hard on getting ready preparations for Christmas. Obviously, we wait until after Remembrance Day to put up all of our decorations, but stay tuned for lots of fun and exciting things. Although we won't be able to having large scale gatherings, we are encouraging everyone to go downtown, check out all the window paintings, the decorations, the trees all decorated. We are looking at having a small Christmas tree sale, and we're working with the Civitans on a revised Santa Claus event. So stay tuned for that. Certainly not my event to announce. The Civitans will certainly make that known soon enough, but just want to give everyone the heads up that lots of hard work and fun and exciting things are underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Main. I had an announcement if I could. I'm always like to cheer on residents that accomplish, that have a great accomplishments. And on Saturday, when reading the Globe and Mail report on business, they had their inaugural Canada's top 150 wealth advisors, for 2021. And I'd like to give a shout out to Michael Thor, proudly of Midland, Ontario, ranked 29th in the country. So congratulations, Mr. Thor. Once again, Midland Boy does well. So I want to thank you very much for all your hard work and great recognition from the Globe and Mail, and 29 in the country. You should be very impressed and very proud, and I'm sure proud of you. So thank you very much. And as I said, another Midland Boy does great. Your worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would be remiss talking about business people. I'd like to give a shout out to Passion for Fashion. They've been in business in the community now for 30 years. Been generous supporters through fashion shows, etc., of various organizations in the community that provide support for like Community Living Roni, for as an example. So just a shout out to Passion for Fashion, and thank you for all the support of the community.
Thank you, Worship. So we'll move on to next motion, which is moved by Councillor Prost and second by Councillor Chesky, that the Committee of the Whole rise and report. All those in favor? It's all yours, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Coming out of Committee of the Whole, I have a motion by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ross, that the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole for the meeting of November 3rd, 2021 be adopted as resolutions of Council. Council, you've heard the motion. Comments or questions? Seeing done, all in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. Next, we move to notices for which notice was given. And we have a motion by Councillor Main that administration review policy options regarding a tree protection bylaw for the town of Midland, and that a staff report be brought to council for consideration at a future meeting. I get a seconder for that motion for Councillor Cunningham. Thank you. Councillor Main, all yours.
Thank you very much. A little bit of context and then what a tree protection bylaw is. So a little bit of context, we got a phone call from somebody who was a councillor, Reeve, back in the 80s, who was incredibly distraught that one of his neighbors would be removing a perfectly healthy tree arbitrarily. And so he made some phone calls, he called us, called different people to say, can we prevent this from happening? And the answer is the town of Midland doesn't have a tree protection bylaw for various reasons. The county has a tree cutting bylaw for lots of a certain size, but there's kind of a bit of a legal gray zone or a loophole, if you will, that there's a missing tool that many municipalities across Ontario utilize a tree protection bylaw. Sometimes it's called a tree cutting bylaw, but I like the term tree protection bylaw because it's about protecting trees. Now, the intention is not to get into the details here of how big trees or how small trees are protected. That will come out of the review. But even yesterday, there was a global commitment to end deforestation. And so not to get into why trees are good and urban tree management and water management, heating, cooling, rain, all that stuff. It's just a beautiful thing that we want to have. Beautification in our community means having lots of trees. And so a tree protection bylaw would give a layer of protection to trees, especially in residential and privately owned trees. Some communities have even delineated areas where this could be applicable or applied. So rural or periphery areas of the town may not be included, depending on if that's the route we want to go. And most of the time, it usually requires an arborist to check if it's dead, dying, dangerous, or even invasive. And from just my quick reading of London, Ontario, only 10% of their applications are rejected. So 90% are accepted for removal. So after I read that statistic, it didn't seem like this was a very onerous protection bylaw to implement. So that's a little bit of context of why this is an important policy for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gordon.
You made a little pun at the beginning there. I just wanted to call out Councillor Main. Arbitrarily. Arbor tree. Anyway, all right. Do these bylaws something in my M&Ms tonight. Do these bylaws, if they come into force, I mean, do they typically have fees? You know, you have to apply to have your tree looked at to see if it qualifies to be cut down, assuming you want to cut one down. Or you want to cut one down, but your neighbor loves the shade and it's on your property, and you know, you don't really care about his shade because you want the tree down to put a pool in. Like, is this going to become something that could end up being a, you know, have a cost along with it for our residents if we enacted this, or is this really about protecting trees?
Sorry, Councilor Main, please.
Well, I'm not sure about the cost of administrating the program. I just pulled up the London, Ontario's one, which has a very, they have a consolidated one. They've had multiple bylaws which they put together, and this is very fresh. They were just looking at it last year. I don't see a fee on here. I think the most important thing is that an arborist takes a look at it, qualified, says, yes, this tree has to come down, or yes, this tree is dangerous, or no, this tree's got many more years of it, and you know, call me in 10 years or something like that. Yeah, it certainly is not trying to be cost prohibitive. Some places may attach a fee to that. I'm not sure. I think that will be the discretion of staff to put that recommendation forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Ross. Oh, sorry, follow on.
Yeah, just a
Councillor
quick follow-up. I guess where I was going is that, you know, some people will look at these as, you know, more red tape. You know, we're always encouraged to dispense with red tape, make things easier, and that this will be, you know, put all kinds of restrictions on what people can do lawfully, you know, enjoying their own property, which may include a tree or two or a dozen. And so, I mean, we can't speak or argue about the bylaw because it doesn't exist yet, or the report hasn't come to us. But my only cautionary note, you know, which I plan to support this today, just so you know, is that we don't make something that becomes punitive and is designed to interfere with people's lawful enjoyment of their property. You know, like I say, they want to put a pool in the backyard, and it means felling 2 or 3 trees that are in the way and pulling up the roots, and that now means the neighbor's not getting the shade anymore where they used to enjoy. Is something like that going to be a problem with these bylaws? And I know no one can answer that right now, but these are the kind of things that sometimes these can bring up. So that's my only sort of question / concern to be thought of. And I'm sure we're not reinventing the wheel here. Other people have thought about this. Thank you.
Councillor. Response, Councillor Main, or you? No, okay. Deputy Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm a little concerned with this bylaw, and I just don't see it being a problem. Where we pass bylaws to resolve problems and issues that are happening in our town. One tree being cut down. I've been on council for 11 years. I've never received a call with regards to my neighbor cut down a tree. I'm in a fight. Yes, maybe these 2 neighbors had a dispute over a tree, but to now ask staff to come up with a report, we now have to, if you want to cut down a tree, or, you know, I'm hearing that you're going to have to get an arborist to come, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it almost seems like we're causing an issue that doesn't exist. Midland have great people. We have great neighbors. You have an issue, you talk to them. Unfortunately, maybe they didn't get the opportunity to talk or discuss it, and the tree just came down before anybody had the opportunity to talk. But I would say you talked about 10% of the trees are only 10% are denied. I'd say only 10% of the trees today have an issue. Probably less, probably 2 or 3% of the trees that are cut down in town. So I am concerned that we, as Councillor Gordon said, we're putting red tape on something that really isn't a problem. So I'm not going to support this at this time, but I feel, you know, the will of council. I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Shevsky. Sorry, do you wish to respond to that, Councillor Main?
Certainly. What we've seen in the last year, there was a significant tree cutting, illegal tree cutting that was actually beyond the size of the county. It was under the Simcoe County's control because it was such a large woodlot being cut down. And I would suggest that we are losing significant trees in our community. You certainly see it when mature trees come down, but it's hard to judge. We don't really have the data of that, but at least empirically, you can see where there's trees that are missing. And I think that our urban tree canopy is in decline. And that's hence why we want to put forward a protection to try to protect these young trees, which have 80+ years of growth or or more to try to protect them. So that's a fair point, though, from the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shevsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to agree with Deputy Mayor on this one. My understanding of natural heritage status was that it would create areas in town where trees would have more protection, and that was going to become the governing body for tree protection, and province-wide. So I don't know exactly if this is a layer on top of that, or if you just want it to be blanket wide across the town. I also don't know what the penalty would be for cutting down a tree that we were given advice not to. Is this something else that's going to fall on our bylaws lap? And is this something like speed limits on walking trails, where we're posting things and hoping that people, follow them, but we really don't have any teeth to enforce these things? I'm just wondering if we're setting our bylaw up for Mission Impossible. And does the natural heritage status cover this? Cover the intention anyway. And I got the same call, Councillor Main, that you got, and spent some time talking about the tree and all the situation around it. And if I had a vote, I would save the tree, but I don't have a vote because it's not on my property. So I won't be supporting this tonight. I don't know, maybe instead of encouraging a tree cutting policy, maybe we encourage a tree planting policy where we plant, a certain amount of trees every year, and I would support that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shevsky, and now Councillor Main.
Yeah, tree planting is a separate initiative. We're talking about urban tree management. Some places like City of Hamilton most recently has done that, where you review your urban tree canopy, you identify how many are invasive, what diversity you have, and then come up with a plan for planting. That is only in the public realm on municipally owned properties. We can certainly encourage people to plant more trees on private properties, but this is the one missing tool that we do not have, that residential trees can be removed without there's no protection at all. And so this is a common tool that is used in other places. So we have a policy gap here in Midland. So this is a really example of comparative policies. Look at the other other municipalities. What tools do they use to improve, enhance, and protect our environment? And we did enact a policy in 2019 that generally talks about protection and enhancement of the tree canopy and natural vegetation for the town of Midland, with subsequent policies, mostly encouraging the seedling distribution program, annual tree planting. But again, it goes back to that we do not have a specific protection bylaw that is very commonplace in other places. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you, Councillor. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Ross. Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Cunningham first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an important discussion, and I'm not sure whether this bylaw is the answer to it, but I do think it's an important discussion to bring up. When natural heritage came across, one of my concerns with a natural heritage policy versus mapping out green corridors through the town was that it did not really take into account the travel of animals through your property, through the town. And there are better ways of doing natural heritage than just saying, I think there might be a creek there, or we don't know what's there. And green corridors that identify important roads that have trees along the side, not just from the keeping the wind down, but also from the just wildlife, not even endangered wildlife, may be a better option. And I think that's something that keeps coming back up, and Councillor Main has looked at that as well, the idea of what is the best way to make sure that our town does maintain that beauty, that urban forest, the wildlife that we see in our region. And I agree, I don't want to see us interfering with the enjoyment of people's property. I'm not sure if there is a good answer for this, but I do think that this is something, I think we're 53% of Midland is trees right now. And I think we need to say we have a wonderful treasure here, and not wait till the treasure is gone to say, it only clear out your scrub sumac, and this is the vision of what our town looks like. So this is my totally undecided, but I don't think this is the bylaw that fixes the problem commentary on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Worship. I don't want to dwell on it, but this is a few years ago, a group of people from a development off of Young Street came and asked us not to plant trees in a subdivision that was planned to have trees planted, and we honored them. We said, okay, it's all right. You don't have to put the trees in. And now we're going to pass a bylaw to save trees. It seems a little odd to me, but I'll ask to call the vote if we could.
If you just hang on a sec, I wouldn't mind making a comment on that. Would you indulge me in that, Deputy Mayor, before I call the question? Thank you.
You're sure. Please, Your Worship.
Thank you. It's just, as Councillor Cunningham's pointed out, approximately 50+% of the town is currently under natural heritage designation, which poses some problems with respect to further development and meeting growth allocations that are coming down from the province to the county and subsequently to us. And that aside, to me, it's that designation, I don't believe, it was more of a desktop exercise. There wasn't necessarily a lot of ground truthing. And so I have some friends who are involved in silvicultural management and inventorying out of U of T who do work for other municipalities. And the first step in any, from their perspectives, and these are qualified foresters who teach forestry, from their perspective, the first thing you want to do is to have an actual inventory of what's present in what quantity, in what condition, as Councillor Main pointed out. And before you get into actual tree cutting bylaws, I think we need to make that first step. And and also, as I think Councillor Cunningham is suggesting, take a re-look at how we've implemented natural heritage in the community. A number of applications have been made for clearing, for example, where the new seniors facility is across or at the lake, the Jarlette facility. That was categorized by some on previous council as a sensitive area. In fact, it didn't qualify under SSCA. Some of these young forest stands that are sitting on what were considered or zoned for industrial or commercial, again, they are cut and you look at that, you say, well, we're losing a lot of our trees. But you look to our neighbors when you talk about travel corridors. I spent 10 years of my life working in that, well, actually more than that, but specifically 10 years of my life looking at travel corridors and wildlife, et cetera. The type of species that we're talking about in an urban environment, they'll go across your front lawn. You have no, I mean, I drove to work tonight. There was a fox going across the street at Harborview and Minden. And it looked both ways before it went over to the island, and it looked both ways, then it crossed. I thought for sure this thing was going to get flat. It didn't. So these animals adapt too. So it's a complex question, but I think from my perspective, the first thing that we would want to do is to do a silvicultural plan for the whole community. So I'll stop there, and I've had a request to call the question, so I shall do that.
Councillor Main had a response.
Oh, beg your pardon, Councillor Main, please.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I've had plenty of time to comment. Just make a quick note. There are areas in our town which have lots of trees. There are some areas that don't have enough trees, namely our downtown, the 93 corridor, commercial corridor, but 2 residential areas in particular have a lower tree density than others. So the grid layout that we have is doing very well for trees, if you look on the aerial imagery, but the suburban developments off of Woodland and Galloway, for whatever reason, for the site plan, the suburban type of design that they have few trees. And so the resident calling from that area has few trees. And so trying to protect the trees in those residential areas, I think is important because there's not many of them. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Main. Your Worship, I'll turn it back over to you and I'll allow you to call the vote.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor of the motion? All those against? I'm sorry, Councillor, the motion fails. You might want to consider that silvicultural plan. So thank you, Council. Good conversation, very interesting topic, and given what's going on in COP26, very germane to that conversation. and the climate change. So, sorry. Moving along, I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Ross, seconded by Councillor Prost, that bylaw 2021-50 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting, with closed session held November 3rd, 2021, be passed and enacted. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. And finally, moved by Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Olszewski, that this regular meeting of council with closed session adjourn at 8:30 this evening. Oh, Councillor,
I just wanted to say
Deputy
to
Mayor
our
Ross.
clerk, I just wanted to say to our clerk, I said 8:30.
You did too.
You did.
All in favor? Thank you. Have a great evening, and see you at the Senate.